She raised the billionaire CEO's son, now he wants him back. That's impossible. The words barely escaped Dominic Kane's lips as a whisper. But Mariana Voss heard them across the crowded elementary school library like they were screamed directly into her soul. Because standing between them, soccer ball tucked under his arm and completely oblivious to the earthquake happening around him, was an 8-year-old boy with storm gray eyes, Dominic's eyes. Eyes that Mariana had spent 8 years trying not to see every time she looked at her son. Her son, not his, not anymore. Have you ever made a choice you couldn't take back? A decision driven by fear that haunted you every single day? That's exactly where Dominic stood when he signed away his parental rights to a newborn son, his own flesh and blood, because grief had convinced him he'd destroy everything he touched. But here's what Dominic didn't know. The woman who adopted his son wasn't a stranger. It was Mariana, the nurse he'd once loved, the woman whose heart he'd shattered into pieces so small she wasn't sure she'd ever find them all. She'd been raising his child in secret for 8 years, building a life he was never supposed to discover. Now, standing face to face in that library, 3 questions hung in the air like grenades with pulled pins. Would she let him back into their lives? Could an 8-year-old boy forgive a father who chose ambition over family? And most terrifying of all, was Dominic Kane capable of becoming the man his son deserved? This is a story about second chances that might come too late. About the price of success, measured in missed bedtimes and first steps. And about a woman who proved that family isn't about biology, it's about who shows up when it matters most. Before we begin, if you've ever struggled with a decision that changed your life forever, hit subscribe and share this story. Someone out there needs to hear that it's never too late to make things right. This is a story about second chances that might come too late, about the price of success measured in missed bedtimes and first steps, and about a woman who proved that family isn't about biology, it's about who shows up when it matters most. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to Mr. Sterling's Secrets of Love. Let's begin. The rain hammered against Mariana Voss's apartment window at 11:34 p.m. like it was trying to break through. She'd grown used to rain, used to the sound of water against glass while she sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by medical textbooks and the kind of exhaustion that settles into your bones and makes a home there. At 32, Mariana had mastered the art of survival. Not living, surviving. There's a difference. And if you've ever worked double shifts while raising a child alone, you know exactly what that difference feels like. The chamomile tea had gone lukewarm in her hands. She should have been studying. Her nursing degree wouldn't complete itself, but her eyes kept drifting to the doorway where she could see Kai's bedroom, 8 years old, storm gray eyes. A smile that could disarm armies, and frequently disarmed her resolve to enforce reasonable bedtimes, the boy she'd promised to protect with her dying breath. Her phone buzzed against the table, vibrating with the kind of insistence that meant someone actually expected her to be awake. The text was from Sienna, her best friend since nursing school. Did you see the news? Dominic Kane is back in the city. Tech conference. Everyone's talking about it. The mug slipped. It happened in slow motion, the way catastrophes always do in memory. Chamomile tea arcing through the air like an accusation. Ceramic shattering against linoleum. Hot liquid pooling around her bare feet. But Mariana couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't do anything except stare at that name glowing on her phone screen. Dominic Kane. The name alone was a thunderclap in her carefully constructed silence. Because 8 years ago, she'd made a promise she never told him about. A promise that involved the child sleeping peacefully down the hall, the child who looked nothing like her but everything like him. You probably think you know where this story is going. Woman raises man's child in secret. Man returns. Drama ensues. But here's what you need to understand about Mariana Voss. She didn't steal Kai. She saved him. From what, you might ask? From the man who'd signed legal documents declaring he wanted nothing to do with his own son. Mariana's hands trembled as she bent to pick up the ceramic shards. A piece caught her palm, drawing blood. She watched it well up, bright red against her pale skin, and thought about how some wounds announce themselves immediately while others take years to reveal their depth. Mom? She spun. Kai stood in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes, his hair sticking up at impossible angles. I heard a crash. Are you okay? Mariana forced a smile. The kind mothers perfect when they're falling apart, but refuse to let their children see the cracks. I'm fine, baby. Just clumsy. Go back to bed. Kai hesitated, and in that moment, Mariana saw it. The way he tilted his head when he was concerned. The exact angle Dominic used to tilt his head when he was trying to read her emotions, back when reading her emotions was something he cared about. You're bleeding, Kai observed, moving closer. It's nothing, just a scratch. You tell me scratches need cleaning, Kai said with the devastating logic of an 8-year-old throwing your own parenting advice back at you. She let him lead her to the bathroom, let him carefully wash her hand with soap and water, his small fingers gentle and competent. She'd taught him basic first aid last year after he'd skinned his knee at school and didn't know what to do. Now here he was, taking care of her. All better, Kai announced, pressing a Band-Aid over her palm with the satisfied air of a surgeon completing a complex procedure. Mariana pulled him into a hug, breathed in the scent of his strawberry shampoo and the indefinable smell that was uniquely him. I love you. You know that, right? I love you more than anything in this world. I know, Mom. His voice was muffled against her shoulder. Can I sleep in your bed tonight? They both knew he was too old for this, but they also both knew that sometimes you need closeness more than you need to follow arbitrary age-appropriate rules. Of course. Later, with Kai curled against her side, his breathing evening into sleep, Mariana stared at the ceiling and let herself remember. 8. She'd built walls higher than skyscrapers, buried secrets deeper than ocean trenches, and now, with 3 words in a text message, those walls were cracking. But Mariana wasn't Kai's biological mother, and the man who was, he had no idea she even had his son. The question that kept her awake until dawn was simple and terrible. What would Dominic Kane do if he ever found out? You need to understand what happened between Mariana and Dominic wasn't a fairy tale. It was 6 stolen months before everything turned to ash. But for those 6 months, it felt like the kind of love that poets write about and everyone else dismisses as fiction. Mariana had been 24 when she met Dominic Kane. Not at some glamorous gala or corporate event where tech billionaires usually meet the women who eventually leave them. No, she met him in the fluorescent-lit chaos of Riverside Medical Center's pediatric ward at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. His sister Olivia had been rushed in after a severe allergic reaction. Anaphylaxis, her airways closing. The kind of emergency that strips away every pretense and shows you who people really are underneath their carefully constructed personas. Dominic had arrived in a storm of designer suits and barely concealed panic. The CEO who commanded boardrooms with unwavering confidence was absolutely falling apart because his sister, his only family, was fighting to breathe. Is she going to be okay? His voice cracked on the question. Raw, vulnerable. Nothing like the polished tech mogul Mariana had seen in articles. She's stable, Mariana had assured him, her calm professionalism a stark contrast to his fraying control. We got the epinephrine in time, but she needs to stay overnight for observation. What Mariana didn't expect was for him to stay too. He sat in that uncomfortable plastic chair by Olivia's bedside all night, didn't leave, didn't check his phone obsessively like most people did. Just sat there, watching his sister sleep, making sure every breath kept coming. At 3 a.m., Mariana brought him coffee. Hospital coffee that tasted like regret and broken dreams, but coffee nonetheless. Thank you, Dominic said, accepting the cup with hands that still trembled slightly. I'm not usually like this. Like what? Human? Mariana surprised herself by sitting in the chair next to his. Her shift had ended 20 minutes ago. She should have been halfway home. He laughed. A short, sharp sound that held no humor. Yeah, something like that. They talked about everything, about nothing, about the weight of responsibility when you're the only person someone has left to count on, about the fear of losing people you love and the impossibility of protecting them from everything. By dawn, something had shifted between them, an invisible thread pulling 2 souls who should never have intersected. Can I see you again? Dominic asked as Mariana finally prepared to leave. Not here. Somewhere that doesn't smell like antiseptic and existential dread. She should have said no, should have recognized the warning signs. A tech CEO and a pediatric nurse? That story only ended one way, and it wasn't happily ever after. But she said yes. Their relationship unfolded like a secret symphony. Stolen moments between her shifts and his board meetings. Late-night dinners in anonymous restaurants, where no one recognized the tech mogul or the exhausted nurse. He made her laugh. Really laugh. Not the polite laughter you give people out of social obligation. She made him feel human, he said. Grounded. Real. You're the only person who doesn't want anything from me, Dominic told her once, 3 months in, lying on her couch with his head in her lap while she played with his hair. Everyone else sees dollar signs or networking opportunities. You just see me. Have you ever felt that? That moment when someone truly sees past all your defenses and likes what they find underneath? That's what those 6 months felt like. Like being truly seen for the first time. Olivia adored Mariana. Would call her just to chat, invite her to movie nights, ask her opinion on everything from career moves to whether the guy she was seeing was worth a second date. Dominic would be an amazing father someday, Olivia said once, seemingly out of nowhere. They were making dinner in Olivia's apartment while Dominic was stuck in back-to-back meetings. He acts all stoic and businesslike, but underneath, he's all heart. He just protects it really well. Mariana remembered that conversation, remembered the warmth in Olivia's voice, the certainty. She'd remember it later too, when everything fell apart. Remember it, and wonder if Olivia had somehow known what was coming. For 6 months, Mariana believed in fairy tales, believed that love was enough, that different worlds could collide and create something beautiful instead of catastrophic. Then, on a rain-soaked highway at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday night, everything changed. Olivia's car, a semi-truck whose driver had been awake for 23 hours straight, and 3 words that would echo forever in Mariana's nightmares. She didn't suffer. The funeral happened on a Tuesday. Gray skies, rain that felt personal. Mariana stood next to Dominic as they lowered Olivia's casket into the ground and watched the man she loved die inside while his body kept breathing. You know that phrase, a shell of a person? That's what Dominic became. Present but absent. There but not. Mariana would catch him staring at nothing for hours, and when she tried to reach him, it was like touching someone through glass. Close, but impossibly distant. "I'm fine," he'd say whenever she asked. The same lie everyone tells when they're falling apart. He threw himself into work with frightening intensity. 16-hour days. Conference calls at midnight. Expanding his empire as if conquest could fill the void Olivia left behind. And Mariana? She tried to be patient. Tried to give him space while also being there. But grief is a jealous companion. It doesn't leave room for anyone else. 3 weeks after the funeral, Dominic called her. "Can you come to Olivia's apartment? I need to. I need to sort through her things. I can't do it alone." So, Mariana went. Because that's what love does. It shows up even when showing up means walking into pain. The apartment still smelled like Olivia. Lavender and vanilla. And that specific perfume she wore that Mariana could never quite identify. Her books lined the shelves. Her photos covered the walls. Her entire life compressed into 900 square feet of memory. Where do we even start? Dominic's voice was hollow. "1 box at a time," Mariana said gently. "That's all we can do." They worked in silence for 2 hours. Clothes into donation bags, books into boxes. Each item a small death. Each object a reminder of someone who'd never use it again. Then Dominic opened the nightstand drawer. The journal was leather-bound, expensive, the kind of thing Olivia would have loved. Her handwriting covered the pages in neat, precise lines. "Should we read it?" Mariana asked carefully. "I don't know if I can handle any more memories right now," Dominic admitted. But he was already opening it. Already reading. At first, it was normal stuff. Journal entries about work frustrations and friend drama, and whether she should cut her hair shorter. Then, the entries changed. 3 months pregnant today, Dominic read aloud, his voice strange. "I haven't told anyone yet. I'm terrified, but also excited. I know this isn't conventional, and I know Dominic would have opinions, but I'm 37 years old. I'm running out of time." He looked up, his face pale. She was pregnant? Mariana felt something cold settle in her stomach. Keep reading." His hands shook as he turned pages, and then he stopped. Just stopped completely, staring at words Mariana couldn't see from where she stood. "Dominic?" She moved closer, put a hand on his shoulder. "What does it say?" He handed her the journal without speaking. She read Olivia's elegant handwriting. Each word another nail in the coffin of everything she thought she knew. "If anything happens to me, Dominic needs to know the baby is his. I used his donation from the fertility clinic without telling him. I was running out of time, and I wanted our bloodline to continue. The child will be born in 3 months. Please, whoever reads this, make sure Dominic knows. Make sure he takes care of my baby." The silence in that apartment was deafening. "The fertility clinic," Dominic finally whispered. "Years ago, before she got sick, she asked me to donate for her future family plans. I completely forgot about it." "Dominic." She was carrying my biological child. He wasn't talking to Mariana anymore. Wasn't talking to anyone. Just processing. My son or daughter. And she died giving birth alone because I didn't even know. "We need to find out what happened," Mariana said, her nurse training kicking in. "The baby. Where's the baby?" Comment below. Would you have told him about the journal or kept the secret? They found answers through Olivia's lawyer. Answers that made everything worse. A boy, born 3 days before Olivia's accident. She'd named him Kai Japanese for ocean because she'd always loved the sea. Complications during delivery had weakened her. The accident 3 days later had finished what childbirth had started. The baby was currently in foster care, waiting for placement. The biological father, Dominic, was listed on confidential documents, but Olivia had died before she could make formal custody arrangements. Mariana watched Dominic crumble, not from grief this time, from the crushing weight of a responsibility he'd never asked for and didn't know how to carry. "I need to see him," Dominic said. "My son. I need to see my son." But the journal held one more secret, one that would split them apart forever. Olivia's final entry, written the day before she died. "I know what I've done might seem unfair to Dominic, but I believe in my brother. I believe he could be an amazing father if he let himself. And I believe Mariana could be an amazing mother. Maybe this is crazy, but sometimes I think fate brought them together for this reason. To raise my child together. To be the family I always wanted for my baby. If something happens to me, I hope they find this. I hope they understand. And I hope they choose love over fear." Dominic stared at his sister's words, at her posthumous blessing for a future that required something he wasn't sure he could give. And in that moment, Mariana watched the man she loved become a stranger. They went to see Kai the next day, March 15th, 2017. Mariana would remember that date forever, because it was the day everything that could have been beautiful turned to ash. The foster agency was in a building that tried too hard to look cheerful. Bright yellow paint, cartoon characters on the walls. The kind of aggressive optimism that made Mariana want to scream because nothing about this situation deserved cheerfulness. A social worker named Patricia led them to a small room where a bassinet held a 3-month-old baby. Mariana saw Dominic's face the moment he looked at Kai. Saw recognition flicker across his features as he registered those storm-gray eyes, his eyes staring up at him with the solemn intensity only babies possess. "He's beautiful," Mariana whispered. Dominic didn't respond, didn't move closer, just stood frozen in the doorway like a man facing his own execution. "Would you like to hold him?" Patricia asked gently. Dominic's voice cracked. "I don't know how." So Mariana showed him. Lifted Kai from the bassinet, marveling at how light he felt, and carefully transferred him to Dominic's arms. Adjusted his hands, showed him how to support the head. For one perfect moment, Mariana thought it would be okay. Dominic looked down at his son, and something softened in his face. Something that looked like possibility. Then Kai started crying. Not the gentle fussing of a slightly discontented baby. The full-throated wail of an infant who knew something was wrong and wanted the whole world to know it too. Dominic panicked. "What do I do? What's wrong with him?" "Nothing's wrong," Mariana assured him, taking Kai back and rocking him gently. "He's just upset. Babies cry. It's what they do." But the damage was done. She could see it in Dominic's eyes. The terror, the certainty that he'd fail at this, the way he felt he'd failed at protecting Olivia. That night, back at Dominic's penthouse apartment, all steel and glass and aggressive modernity, they had the conversation that would end them. I can't do this. Dominic's voice was flat, empty. I can't be a father. Yes, you can, Mariana insisted. You're just scared. That's normal. Every new parent is terrified. You don't understand. He turned to face her, and what she saw in his eyes made her blood run cold. I couldn't keep my sister alive. I couldn't protect the only family I had. What makes you think I could possibly take care of a helpless infant? That's grief talking, not logic. Olivia's death wasn't your fault. Wasn't it? The words exploded out of him. She was stressed about being a single mother, stressed about finances. I could have helped more, could have been there more. Instead, I was in board meetings and acquisition calls and building an empire that doesn't mean anything because she's dead. Mariana felt something fracture inside her chest. So what are you saying? The baby deserves better. Someone stable. Someone who isn't falling apart. Someone who actually knows what they're doing. He's your son. Biologically. Dominic's jaw set in that stubborn way she used to find attractive. But I never chose this. I never agreed to be a father. Olivia made that decision without me. The betrayal hit Mariana like a physical blow. So you're just going to abandon him? Your own flesh and blood? Your sister's final gift? I'll provide financially, Dominic said, already retreating into the armor of corporate detachment. Set up a trust fund. Ensure he goes to the best foster family, the best schools. He'll never want for anything materially. Except a father, Mariana shot back. Except someone who actually wants him. I'm not capable of that right now. Maybe not ever. The child deserves better than a broken man who'll destroy everything he touches. Have you ever had to choose between protecting someone you love and giving them what they deserve? That's the impossible position Mariana faced in that moment. She looked at the man she'd spent 6 months falling in love with, looked at him and realized she'd been in love with a version of him that only existed when things were easy, when grief wasn't testing who he really was underneath the charm and success. And she realized something else. Something that would define the next 8 years of her life. Dominic was right about one thing. Kai deserved better. But not better than Dominic could provide. Better than Dominic was willing to provide. If you sign away your rights, Mariana said slowly, you can't come back. You can't change your mind in 6 months, or a year, or whenever grief finally releases its grip. That baby deserves someone who chooses him every single day, not someone who shows up when it's convenient. I know, Dominic's voice broke on the words. I know what I'm giving up, but it's the right thing to do. Mariana left that night, walked out of his penthouse and out of his life, didn't cry until she was safely in her car. Then she sobbed until her throat was raw and her eyes burned. But even through the heartbreak, a plan was forming. Desperate and probably crazy, and definitely life-altering. If Dominic didn't want his son, Mariana would take him. She looked at the man she thought she knew and realized, fear makes cowards of us all. 3 days later, Dominic signed legal documents terminating his parental rights to a 3-month-old boy named Kai. He transferred $5 million into a trust fund, made arrangements through lawyers and accountants for every material need to be met, and then he disappeared from their lives without a backward glance. But what Dominic didn't know, what he would never discover for 8 years, was what Mariana did next. The social worker looked at Mariana like she'd lost her mind. You want to foster him? Patricia repeated, her tone hovering somewhere between skeptical and concerned. The baby from last week? You're sure? I'm sure. Mariana's hands were steady even though her heart was hammering. I know it's unusual, but it's more than unusual, Miss Voss. You're 24 years old, single, working double shifts as a pediatric nurse. What makes you think you can handle a newborn? Imagine holding a newborn who looks nothing like you, but everything, like the man who broke your heart. Could you love him anyway? That's the question Mariana had asked herself for 3 sleepless days after Dominic walked away. The answer had come at 4 a.m. on a Thursday morning. Simple and clear and absolutely certain. Yes, she could love him, She did love him already. "I'm a trained pediatric nurse," Mariana said, meeting Patricia's skeptical gaze head on. "I have stable employment, health insurance, and a 2-bedroom apartment. I've worked with newborns for 3 years. I know what I'm getting into." "But why this baby specifically? You don't have any biological connection." "Because he needs someone who will choose him," Mariana interrupted. "The truth, raw and honest, every single day. Not someone who provides money, but no presence. He needs someone who will show up." Patricia studied her for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. "All right, let's start the paperwork." The process was grueling. Background checks that went back to childhood, home inspections where strangers judged whether her apartment was suitable, financial reviews, references, psychological evaluations. "Why do you want to foster?" the psychologist asked during her 3rd session. Mariana couldn't tell the full truth, couldn't explain about Dominic or Olivia or the tangled web of grief and love that had led her here. So she told a different truth. "Because every child deserves someone who fights for them, and I want to be that person for Kai." 3 months after Dominic signed away his rights, baby Kai came home. Mariana stood in her apartment, the same apartment where a tea mug would shatter 8 years later, holding a 6-month-old baby, and wondering if she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. Then Kai looked up at her with those storm-gray eyes and smiled. Actually smiled, not just gas or reflex, but a real smile of recognition and trust. And Mariana knew she'd made the only choice she could live with. Those first years were impossibly hard. 3 a.m. feedings blurred into 4 a.m. changings blurred into 5 a.m. laundry. She survived on coffee and determination, and the fierce protective love that only parents understand. Her mother moved in to help. Margaret Voss took one look at her exhausted daughter and the infant she'd inexplicably adopted and asked exactly one question. "Is this about that tech CEO you were dating?" "Mom, I'm not judging, sweetheart. I just need to know if he's going to show up and complicate things." "He's not," Mariana said with absolute certainty. "He doesn't even know I have Kai." Margaret nodded once. "Then, let's get you some sleep. You look like death warmed over." Why didn't Mariana tell Dominic? The question haunted her some nights, but the answer was always the same. He'd made his choice, signed legal papers declaring he wanted no part of Kai's life. What was she supposed to do? Call him and beg him to care? Show up at his office with a baby he'd already rejected? No. If Dominic wanted to find his son, he knew where to start looking. The fact that he didn't, that told Mariana everything she needed to know. So she built a new life, changed her phone number, used her mother's maiden name Voss instead of Martinez on all of Kai's official documents, moved to a different part of the city, closer to a better school district, sealed the adoption records tight, and raised Kai as her own. 2 years in, the adoption was finalized. The judge smiled at her in the courtroom, little Kai perched on her hip, chewing on a plastic toy, and declared them officially a family. Mariana cried. Happy tears, mixed with grief, for what could have been, if Dominic had been braver, for the family Olivia had imagined in her journal, for all the futures that died the day fear won. But she also felt something else. Pride. She'd done this. Survived the impossible. And come out the other side with a thriving, happy toddler who called her Mama and meant it. Kai's first steps. His first words, Mama, followed quickly by No, because toddlers are excellent at boundaries. His first day of preschool when he clung to her leg and cried until she promised to come back. And she did come back. Always. Every single time. Because that's what showing up means. For 8 years, Mariana built an impenetrable fortress around her son, gave him stability and love and the certainty that he mattered, never mentioned his biological father, never explained the complicated truth that would one day need explaining. She told herself she'd tell him when he was older, when he could understand, when the truth wouldn't shatter the security she'd worked so hard to build. 8 years of birthdays and Christmases. 8 years of scraped knees and bedtime stories. 8 years of being enough for both parents. Until the phone call that would bring it all crashing down. The morning started normal, which should have been Mariana's first clue that catastrophe was waiting around the corner because, in her experience, normal never lasted. Mom, I can't find my soccer cleats, Kai's voice echoed from his bedroom with the particular kind of panic only 8-year-olds can achieve over misplaced athletic equipment. "Did you check under your bed?" Mariana called back, simultaneously packing his lunch and reviewing her shift schedule. Multitasking had become her superpower. "Found them," she smiled. Kai had inherited her organizational skills, which meant he'd lost them again by tomorrow. They drove to Pinewood Elementary together, Kai chattering about the upcoming soccer championship and whether Coach Mike would finally let him play striker. Normal conversation, normal morning. Except for the text from Sienna, still burning a hole in her consciousness. Dominic Kane is back in the city. Mariana had barely slept, kept running scenarios in her head. The chances of Dominic discovering Kai's existence were slim. Astronomical, really. He'd signed away his rights 8 years ago and never looked back. Why would he start looking now? "Love you, Mom." Kai was already halfway out of the car before she'd fully stopped. "Love you too, baby. Have a good day." She watched him race toward the building, backpack bouncing, and felt that familiar squeeze of fierce protectiveness mixed with wonder. How did she get so lucky? Then Mr. Chen appeared at her car window. Albert Chen taught 3rd grade and had been Kai's teacher since September. Young, enthusiastic. The kind of teacher who actually seemed to like children instead of barely tolerating them. "Mrs. Voss, could we chat for a moment?" Mariana's stomach dropped. "Is Kai in trouble?" "Not at all." Mr. Chen's smile was genuine. "Actually, it's good news. We've been selected for a special program. Kane Foundation is funding a tech literacy initiative for underprivileged schools. They're sending representatives today to observe classrooms. I wanted to give you a heads up in case they contact parents." The world stopped. Kane Foundation. Dominic's philanthropic arm. The irony was suffocating. That's great," Mariana managed, her voice sounding strange even to her own ears. "Very exciting for the kids. Isn't it? The resources they're providing are incredible. New computers, tablets, coding classes. It's going to transform our program." Mariana nodded, made appropriate noises, somehow extracted herself from the conversation without screaming. She made it 3 blocks before she had to pull over, hands gripping the steering wheel, forcing herself to breathe. Representatives didn't mean Dominic himself, she told herself. He had people for this kind of thing. Assistants and foundation directors, and an entire staff whose job was to show up places so he didn't have to. She was being paranoid, letting one text message from Sienna spiral into catastrophe. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Every instinct screamed not to answer. But nurse training had conditioned her to take unknown calls. What if the school needed her? What if Kai was hurt? "Hello? Mariana Voss?" A crisp, professional female voice. "This is Jasmine Park from Kane Foundation. We're implementing our new education program at Pinewood Elementary, and your son Kai's teacher recommended we speak with you about his exceptional aptitude for mathematics and problem solving." The world tilted. Yes? We're so excited about this program. Mr. Kane himself will be visiting the school this afternoon to meet with select families and discuss the initiative. Would you be available at 3 p.m.? In 6 hours, the past and present would collide. "Mr. Kane?" Mariana's voice came out strangled. "Dominic Kane?" "Yes, he's very hands-on with this particular program. We have several families scheduled, but given Kai's scores, we thought you'd want to be included. Share this with someone who believes in second chances, or someone who knows some mistakes can't be forgiven." Mariana's mind raced. She could say no, could claim a work emergency, could grab Kai from school right now and run. But run where? And for how long? And how would she explain to an 8-year-old why they were suddenly fleeing their life? "Mrs. Voss, are you still there?" "Yes." The word felt like jumping off a cliff. "Yes, I'll be there." She hung up, sat in her parked car, staring at nothing while her carefully constructed world crumbled around her. For 8 years, she'd feared this moment. Prepared speeches she'd never have to give, imagined scenarios that seemed safely hypothetical. Now, it was real. In 6 hours, Dominic Kane would walk into her son's school, and Mariana had no idea what she'd do when those storm-gray eyes, his eyes, Kai's eyes, finally saw what she'd been hiding all along. She called in sick to work. First time in 3 years. Her supervisor was understanding, probably because Mariana never called in sick. Then she went home, changed clothes 3 times, practiced what she'd say, discarded every version because they all sounded either too angry or too desperate, or too much like someone who'd spent 8 years raising his child in secret. At 2:30, she forced herself back to the car. The drive to Pinewood Elementary felt like driving to her own trial. At 2:47 p.m., Mariana stood in the school library, surrounded by other parents, watching the door with the focus of a soldier awaiting battle. Her hands were shaking. She clasped them together, trying to project calm she absolutely didn't feel. You know that feeling when your worst nightmare and deepest wish become the same thing? That's what happened next. The door opened at 2:51, and Dominic Kane walked into the room. Time has a strange way of collapsing when you see someone you haven't seen in 8 years. Someone you loved. Someone who broke you. Someone who has no idea about the secret you've been keeping. Dominic looked different. Older, obviously. 37 now instead of 29. Silver threaded through his dark hair at the temples. Lines bracketed his eyes that hadn't been there before. He'd always been handsome, unfairly so, but now there was a weight to him. A gravitas that came from building an empire and losing the people who made it meaningful. He wore a perfectly tailored suit, moved through the room with the quiet confidence of someone who commanded attention without demanding it. Shook hands with parents and teachers, his smile polished and professional and completely empty. Mariana watched him from across the library, partially hidden behind a cluster of other parents. Maybe she could avoid this. Maybe she could slip out before his gaze swept the room. Professional, detached, cataloging faces with the precision of someone trained to read people until it landed on her. She watched recognition flicker across his face, confusion, surprise. His polished smile faltered for just a fraction of a second before corporate training reasserted itself. But his eyes, storm gray eyes that used to look at her with love, now they held questions. So many questions. Dominic excused himself from the Foundation representative mid-sentence, crossed the room with predatory focus. 30 feet, 20, 10. And then he was standing in front of her, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Different than she remembered. More expensive. Everything about him screamed money and success, and the kind of life she'd never been part of. Mariana. Her name on his lips was equal parts question and accusation. What are you doing here? She lifted her chin, refused to show weakness. I could ask you the same thing. This is my Foundation's program. His brow furrowed. Why are you here? At this school? Before she could answer, before she could decide whether to lie or confess, or simply run, the library door burst open. Kai rushed in. Soccer ball tucked under his arm, face flushed from recess, hair sticking up exactly the way Dominic's used to do after he'd been running his hands through it. Mom, his voice carried across the room. Coach says I scored 3 goals today. 3. He says if I keep playing like that, I'll definitely be striker for the... He stopped short. Noticed the adult conversation happening. Noticed the stranger staring at his mother with an intensity that made even an 8-year-old uncomfortable. Oh, sorry. Kai's natural politeness kicked in. I didn't mean to interrupt. But Dominic wasn't looking at Mariana anymore. He was staring at Kai. Mariana felt the exact moment it happened. Watched Dominic's face drain of all color as he registered details that couldn't possibly be coincidence. The storm gray eyes, identical to his own. The tilt of the head, when curious. Exactly how Dominic tilted his head. The shape of his jaw. The angle of his cheekbones. Features that would become even more pronounced as Kai grew into them. Dominic's hand gripped the back of a nearby chair. His knuckles went white. Kai, honey, Mariana said, voice remarkably calm considering her heart was trying to escape her chest. Why don't you wait outside for a minute? I need to finish talking with this gentleman. Okay, Kai bounced off, oblivious to the earthquake happening in his wake, oblivious to the fact that he'd just met his biological father for the first time since infancy. The silence after he left was deafening. Dominic stared at the closed door. When he finally turned back to Mariana, his expression was unreadable. Shock, anger, confusion, disbelief. All of it warring for dominance on a face that hadn't shown real emotion in years. That's impossible. he whispered. 4 other parents were trying not to obviously eavesdrop. Jasmine Park was watching from across the room, with concern. "We need to talk," Mariana said quietly. "But not here. Not now." How Dominic's voice cracked. He cleared his throat. Started again. "He's 8. He has my eyes." "Mariana, what?" "Tonight." She cut him off before he could say anything that would expose secrets in front of witnesses. "There's a coffee shop 3 blocks east of here. Brewer's Corner. Do you remember it?" She didn't know why she chose that place. Maybe because it was public enough to feel safe, but private enough for the conversation they needed to have. Maybe because it was close to where they used to meet, back when meeting felt like possibility instead of catastrophe. 7 p.m., she continued when Dominic just stared at her. "I'll explain everything." "Mariana." 7 p.m., Dominic. "That's all I can do right now." She turned and walked away before he could respond, before her composure could crack, before anyone could see how badly her hands were shaking. Kai was waiting in the hallway, bouncing a soccer ball off the wall with the energy only 8-year-olds possess. "Was that about the program?" he asked. "Mr. Chen says we're getting new computers." "Yeah, baby. Something like that." Mariana ruffled his hair. "Come on, let's go home." In the car, Kai chattered about soccer and school and his friend Marcus, who'd brought the coolest Pokemon cards for lunch. Normal 8-year-old concerns, completely oblivious to the fact that his entire world had just shifted on its axis. Mariana responded automatically, made appropriate sounds, but inside she was falling apart, because the moment she'd feared for 8 years had finally arrived. And now, she had 6 hours to figure out what the hell she was going to say to the man who'd abandoned his son, the man who'd signed legal papers terminating his parental rights, the man who was now staring at undeniable evidence that his son existed. That evening, after she'd fed Kai dinner and helped with homework and tucked him into bed with promises to explain tomorrow why some strange man had been staring at them after all of that, Mariana stood in her bathroom and stared at her reflection. She looked tired. 8 years of single parenthood would do that, but she also looked strong, capable, like someone who'd survived the impossible, because she had. At 6:45, she drove to Brewer's Corner. The coffee shop was exactly as she remembered. Exposed brick, mismatched furniture, the smell of freshly ground beans, and old books. Dominic was already there, sitting rigid in a corner booth, looking like a man awaiting execution. Mariana slid into the seat across from him. No preamble, no gentle lead-in, just the truth she'd been holding for 8 years. His name is Kai. He's 8 years old. He loves soccer, hates broccoli, and wants to be a marine biologist. He's brilliant, kind, and the best thing that ever happened to me. Dominic's hands shook around his untouched coffee cup. "You adopted him, Olivia's baby. You adopted my son." "I fostered him," Mariana corrected. The adoption was finalized 2 years ago. And yes, biologically, he's your son. But you gave up that right 8 years ago when you signed those papers. The words hung between them like broken glass. "You never told me." Dominic's voice was low, dangerous, the kind of quiet that precedes explosions. "You never asked." Mariana kept her tone even, though her heart was hammering. "You signed away your rights and disappeared. What was I supposed to do? Track you down and beg you to care? I had a right to know." "You had no rights?" she interrupted, voice sharp as broken glass. "You terminated them. Legally, officially. You threw money at the problem and walked away. Those are your words, Dominic, not mine." His jaw clenched. "I was grieving. I was broken. You, of all people, should understand. We all were." Mariana leaned forward, 8 years of resentment finally finding a voice. "We all lost Olivia. But Kai needed someone who would show up anyway. Someone who would wake up at 3 a.m. for feedings and change diapers and worry about every little cough. Someone who chose him over fear." "So you took him without telling me?" "You knew he existed. You knew he needed a home. If you'd cared even slightly about what happened to him, you could have checked, could have asked, could have done literally anything besides disappearing." The coffee shop was mostly empty. A few college students with laptops, an older couple by the window, no one paying attention to the 2 people systematically destroying each other in the corner booth. "Tell me everything," Dominic said finally. I need to know. So Mariana told him. About going to the foster agency. About the 3-month approval process that felt like running a marathon with weights strapped to her ankles. About the first time she held Kai, really held him, as his mother instead of just a concerned nurse. He was 6 months old, she said quietly. So small. He'd been in foster care the whole time you were, wherever you were. And he looked at me with your eyes, and I just knew. I knew I'd fight anyone who tried to take him from me. Including me? You weren't fighting for him, Dominic. You ran. He flinched. That's not fair. Fair? Mariana's voice rose despite her best efforts. You want to talk about fair? Let me tell you about fair. Fair was working double shifts while pursuing my nursing degree, because babies are expensive and trust funds don't cover everything. Fair was my mother moving in to help, because I couldn't afford childcare. Fair was explaining to a 3-year-old why he didn't have a daddy when all his friends did. What did you tell him? The truth, that his biological father made a choice, that sometimes people aren't ready for the love that's offered to them. 8 years of 3 a.m. feedings poured out in that coffee shop. 8 years of first words and scraped knees, all experienced alone. He asks about you sometimes, Mariana continued, her voice softer now. Not you specifically. His father. Where he is. Why he left. And I tell him that his father was young and scared and dealing with grief that made clear thinking impossible. You defended me? Dominic looked stunned. I defended the version of you I loved, before grief turned you into someone I didn't recognize. Dominic was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. I made a mistake, the worst mistake of my life, but I'm here now. I want to know him. I want to be part of his life. Mariana's protective instincts roared to life. He doesn't know about you, about any of this. He thinks I'm his mother, period. And I won't let you waltz in and destroy the security I've built for him. I'm his father. Biology made you his father, Mariana interrupted, and there was steel in her voice now. But you walked away. You don't get to claim that title just because it's convenient. Just because seeing him made you feel guilty. It's not about guilt, isn't it? You've spent 8 years building your empire, living your life without the burden of a child you didn't want. And now that he's past the hard part, past the diapers and sleepless nights and terrible twos, now you want in? The accusation hit its mark. Dominic's face went pale. That's not. I didn't know you had him. If I'd known, would it have made a difference? Mariana challenged. Really? Would you have suddenly wanted to be a father? The question hung between them, unanswered, because they both knew the truth. For Dominic to have found Kai, he would have had to look, and he hadn't looked. Not once in 8 years. I was wrong, Dominic finally said, and his voice cracked on the words. Catastrophically wrong. I let fear make my decisions. I convinced myself that Kai would be better off without me. And maybe he was. Maybe you gave him a life I never could have. But I'm here now, Mariana, and I want to try. Try? The word tasted bitter. Parenting isn't something you try, Dominic. It's not a business venture you can walk away from if the numbers don't work out. It's showing up every single day. Loving someone even when they drive you crazy. Being there for the boring parts and the hard parts, and the parts that make you question everything about yourself. Then let me start. His gray eyes, Kai's eyes, met hers with something that looked like genuine remorse. Please, I can't undo the past, but I want to be part of his future. Have you ever had to choose between protecting someone you love and giving them what they deserve? That's the impossible position Mariana faced. Because the truth was complicated. Kai did deserve to know his father, deserved the option of having both parents in his life instead of just one. But he also deserved protection from disappointment, from abandonment, from a man who'd already proven that when things got hard, he ran. If I allow this, Mariana said slowly, each word carefully chosen, it's on my terms. We start slow. Supervised visits. Therapy for Kai to process everything. And the very second you hurt him, you're gone. Do you understand? You get one chance. Not 2. Not 3. 1. Relief flooded Dominic's features. Anything. Whatever you need. Whatever he needs. He comes first, Mariana emphasized. Not your schedule. Not your board meetings. Not your empire. Kai comes first, or this doesn't happen. I understand. I don't think you do. Mariana leaned back, suddenly exhausted. You're used to being in control, Dominic. Used to people rearranging their lives around yours. But that's not how this works. You don't get to be the CEO here. You're a father, which means you show up when he needs you, not when it's convenient. I know. Do you? She studied him across the table. Because the man I fell in love with 8 years ago would have done anything for the people he cared about. Are you that man again? Or are you still the one who runs when things get hard? The silence stretched, heavy, uncomfortable. Finally, Dominic spoke. I don't know who I am anymore, but I want to find out, and I want Kai to be part of that journey. It wasn't the answer Mariana wanted, but it was, perhaps, the only honest one he could give. I need to tell him, she said. Before we do anything else, he deserves to know the truth. When? I don't know. Soon? I need to figure out how to explain that his entire life has been built on a complicated truth I've been protecting him from. Can I be there? When you tell him? Mariana considered. No, not at first. He needs to process this with me first, his safe person. Then, if he wants to meet you, and only if he wants to, we'll arrange something. Dominic nodded, handed her a business card with his personal cell number written on the back. Call me when you're ready. I'll make myself available. As Mariana left the coffee shop, she felt the weight of an impossible choice settling onto her shoulders like concrete. Because the truth was more complicated than anger or forgiveness. Dominic Kane was Kai's father. Biologically, legally, he'd given up that right. But ethically, morally, Kai deserved to know where he came from. But he also deserved protection. From disappointment, from abandonment, from the man who'd already broken his mother's heart once. If I allow this, Mariana thought, it's on my terms. And the moment you hurt him, you're gone. She had no idea she was signing up for the hardest year of her life. Mariana drove home in silence. No radio, no podcasts, just the sound of her own breathing and the thoughts spiraling through her mind like a hurricane. What had she just agreed to? The streetlights blurred past. Red light, green light. The mechanics of driving so automatic, she barely registered the turns. Muscle memory carrying her home while her brain short-circuited. She pulled into her driveway at 8:47 p.m., sat in the car for 10 minutes, staring at her apartment building. Inside, her mother was probably watching TV. Kai was definitely asleep, because 8-year-olds crashed hard after soccer practice. Inside was normal, safe, the life she'd built brick by careful brick. Out here, in the dark, doubt crept in like fog. Had she just made the biggest mistake of her life? Dominic wanted to be a father. Great, wonderful. But wanting something and being capable of it were two very different things. And Mariana had front row seats to what happened when Dominic Kane faced hard choices. He ran. 8 years ago, faced with a grieving newborn and the crushing responsibility of single parenthood, he'd run, signed papers, transferred money, disappeared. What made her think this time would be different? Have you ever had to choose between protecting someone you love and giving them what they deserve? That's the impossible position Mariana faced. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. You've been sitting in the car for 15 minutes. Either come inside or I'm coming out there. Mariana smiled, despite everything. Margaret Voss didn't miss much. She found her mother in the kitchen, tea already brewing. Sit, Margaret commanded, and Mariana sat. Do you want to tell me what happened? Her mother's voice was gentle. Or do you want me to guess? Dominic found out about Kai. Margaret's hand paused halfway to her teacup. How? His foundation is funding a program at Kai's school. He came to visit, saw Kai, saw me, put 2 and 2 together. And I agreed to let him meet Kai. Supervised, slow, but I agreed. Her mother studied her for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, she nodded. Good. Mariana's head snapped up. Good. Mom. He abandoned Kai. He signed away his rights. How is letting him back into our lives good? Because Kai deserves to make his own choice about his father, Margaret said simply. You can protect him from a lot of things, sweetheart, but you can't protect him from the truth forever. What if Dominic leaves again? What if he breaks Kai's heart, the way he broke mine. Then, we'll be here, to pick up the pieces, the way we always are. Margaret reached across the table, took her daughter's hand. But what if he doesn't? What if he's grown up? What if grief doesn't own him anymore? I can't take that risk. It's not your risk to take, her mother interrupted gently. It's Kai's, and he's stronger than you think. You raised him to be. Mariana felt tears burn behind her eyes, the exhaustion of 8 years suddenly catching up all at once. I'm terrified, she whispered. I know. That means you're doing it right. Later, after her mother had gone to bed, Mariana stood in Kai's doorway, watched him sleep, sprawled across his bed like a starfish, one arm hanging off the edge. She'd done this every night for 8 years, checked on him, made sure he was breathing, covered him with blankets he'd kick off 10 minutes later. The weight of being his sole protector had never felt heavier, because soon she wouldn't be alone in that responsibility, and she wasn't sure if that was a relief or a disaster waiting to happen. What if Kai loved Dominic more than he loved her? What if the biological connection trumped 8 years of showing up? What if she'd sacrificed everything, her 20s, her career advancement, her dating life, her freedom, only to be replaced by the man who'd contributed nothing but DNA? The thoughts were ugly, selfish. She hated herself for thinking them, but they were there anyway, persistent as weeds. Mariana pulled Kai's blanket up around his shoulders, kissed his forehead gently so as not to wake him. I love you, more than you'll ever know, and I hope I'm doing the right thing. Kai shifted in his sleep, mumbled something that sounded like 3 goals, and settled back into dreams. As Mariana stood in the darkness of Kai's bedroom, she whispered a prayer to Olivia wherever she was. Help me not destroy what you wanted for your son. 3 days later, Mariana still hadn't told Kai the truth. 3 days of normal mornings and normal dinners and normal bedtime routines. 3 days of carrying a secret that grew heavier with each passing hour. On day 4, she finally broke. They were eating breakfast, Kai's favorite, chocolate chip pancakes that were definitely not nutritionally balanced, but made him happy when Mariana took a breath and jumped. Kai, honey, I need to talk to you about something important. He looked up from his pancakes, syrup on his chin. Am I in trouble? No, baby, nothing like that. She paused. How did you tell an 8-year-old that his entire life was more complicated than he knew? Do you remember the man at school the other day, at the library? Kai's face scrunched up, thinking, the one who was staring at us? Yes, him. His name is Dominic Kane, and he knew your birth family. The word hung in the air. Birth family. Something they discussed in abstract terms, but never with specifics. Really? Kai's eyes widened with the innocent curiosity only children possess. Like my birth mom? Your birth aunt, Mariana corrected carefully. Her name was Olivia. She was wonderful, funny and kind, and she loved you very much before you were born. Was? She died, honey, before you could meet her. That's why I adopted you. Kai processed this, the way children process all difficult information quickly, with questions that cut to the heart of things. And Mr. Kane knew her? She was his sister, which makes him, Mariana's voice caught, which makes him your biological father. Silence. Kai stared at his pancakes, put down his fork. When he looked up, his storm gray eyes, Dominic's eyes, were confused. I have a dad? You have me, Mariana said quickly. That hasn't changed. I'm your mom, and that will never change. But yes, biologically, Dominic is your father. Why didn't I know? Because it's complicated. He wasn't ready to be a dad when you were born. He was dealing with grief from losing his sister, and he made a very hard choice. He didn't want me. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. Blunt and painful and achingly perceptive. He was scared, Mariana said, choosing her words carefully. Sometimes adults make bad choices when they're scared, but he wants to meet you now, if you want to meet him. Kai looked at her with an expression far too mature for 8 years old. Do you want me to meet him? The question gutted her. Because the honest answer was no. She wanted to keep Kai safe in their bubble. Wanted to protect him from disappointment. Wanted things to stay exactly as they'd been for 8 years. But that wasn't what Kai needed to hear. I want you to make the choice that feels right for you, Mariana said. If you want to meet him, I'll be right there with you. If you don't, That's okay too. This is your decision, baby, not mine. Kai thought about this, pushed pancake pieces around his plate. Does he have my eyes? He finally asked. Mr. Kane? Mariana smiled, despite the tears threatening. Yes, you have his eyes, and his smile, and the way you tilt your head when you're thinking hard about something. Okay, Kai said simply. I want to meet him. If you think Dominic deserves this second chance, let me know in the comments, or tell me if Mariana's making the biggest mistake of her life. 2 days later, Dominic arrived at their modest apartment. Mariana had spent 45 minutes cleaning, then realized that was ridiculous and messed it back up slightly so it wouldn't look like she'd been cleaning for 45 minutes. The doorbell rang at exactly 2 p.m. Punctual. Of course, he was punctual. She opened the door, and there he was, Dominic Kane, tech billionaire, standing on her worn doormat in jeans and a simple button-down, dressed down, trying to look approachable instead of intimidating. Hi, he said, and she heard the nervousness underneath the word. Come in. The contrast between their lives had never been more obvious. His penthouse was all steel and glass and aggressive wealth. Her apartment was cozy clutter Kai's drawings on the fridge, mismatched furniture, the kind of lived-in chaos that came with actually living. Dominic looked around with an expression Mariana couldn't quite read. This is home, she said, slightly defensive. It's perfect, he replied, and surprised her by meaning it. It feels real. Kai appeared in the hallway, stopped when he saw Dominic. They stared at each other, father and son meeting for the first time, with awareness of what they were to each other. Hi, Kai said, with the careful politeness she'd taught him. Hi. Dominic's voice cracked. It's nice to meet you properly. Your mom has told me so much about you. Awkward silence. This is Mr. Kane, Mariana said, filling the void. He knew your Aunt Olivia. Well, we've explained about birth families, right? Kai nodded, still watching Dominic warily. I understand this is strange, Dominic said, lowering himself to Kai's eye level. And probably a little scary, but I'd really like to get to know you, if that's okay. Why do we have the same eyes? Kai asked directly. Because children, bless them, cut through pretense like knives through butter. Dominic glanced at Mariana. She nodded permission. Because I'm your biological father, Dominic said gently, which means we share DNA. The same way you and your mom don't share DNA, but she's your real mom because she's the one who's been here for you. Kai considered this. Did you not want to be here? The question hung in the air, like a grenade. I was scared, Dominic admitted, and his honesty was perhaps the best choice he could have made. When you were born, I'd just lost my sister, your aunt. And I was so afraid I'd be a bad father that I made a terrible choice. I walked away. And I've regretted it every day since. Mom says you didn't know about me, about her having me. She's right. I knew you existed, but I didn't know your mom had adopted you. If I'd known, Dominic trailed off. Well, I'd like to think I would have been braver. Kai looked at Mariana. Can he stay for dinner? Simple, direct, the way children navigate complex situations. Mariana felt something crack in her chest. If you want him to, yes. Okay, I want him to. Dinner was awkward, carefully polite. Dominic asked questions about school and soccer. Kai answered with increasing comfort as the evening progressed. They discovered they both liked the same pizza toppings and both hated mushrooms with identical intensity. That's genetic, you know, Dominic said. Taste preferences. You got my terrible mushroom opinion. Kai giggled, actually giggled, and Mariana watched Dominic's face transform with wonder at the sound. As Dominic left that night, Kai surprised everyone by hugging him. Quick and awkward, but a hug nonetheless. Will you come back? Kai asked. If you want me to, absolutely. Okay. Bye, Mr. Kane. You can call me Dominic, he offered, if you want. After Kai had gone to bed, after Mariana had assured him 17 times that everything was okay, she stood in her kitchen and tried to process what had just happened. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dominic. Thank you. For tonight. For giving me this chance. For raising him to be kind despite everything. Thank you. Mariana stared at the message for a long time. Then, despite every instinct screaming at her to be cautious, she replied, "Same time next week?" The answer came immediately. "I'll be there." As Dominic left that night, Kai had asked the question Mariana dreaded. "Mom, why did you cry when Mr. Kane said goodnight?" She'd told him the truth. Sort of. Because sometimes when something good finally happens, your body doesn't quite know what to do with the relief. 2 weeks became 3, 3 became 4. Dominic showed up every Saturday at 2 p.m. like clockwork. They'd have dinner, play board games, sometimes just talk. Kai warmed to him slowly. Started calling him Dominic instead of Mr. Kane. Started asking him questions about technology and business with the insatiable curiosity of an 8-year-old who discovered someone willing to answer. Mariana watched from the periphery, watched Dominic make pancakes in her kitchen with Kai perched on the counter, supervising, watched them build elaborate Lego structures. Watched Dominic actually listen when Kai explained the complex rules of Pokemon with the seriousness of someone discussing international treaties. It was good. Better than she'd expected. Dominic showed up. Didn't cancel. Didn't make promises he couldn't keep. But the elephant in the room kept growing. Kai still didn't know the full truth. Knew Dominic was his biological father, yes. But not that Dominic had signed away his rights. Not that he'd actively chosen not to be a father for 8 years. Mariana's therapist, because yes, she'd started seeing a therapist the moment this whole situation exploded, had strong opinions. "He deserves the complete truth," Dr. Rivera said during their weekly session. "Not a sanitized version. He's old enough to understand nuance." "He's 8, Mariana protested. And 8-year-olds are remarkably good at sensing when adults are lying by omission. You tell him now, with context and support, or he finds out later and feels betrayed." Mariana knew she was right. But knowing something intellectually and being ready to act on it emotionally were different things. The conflict came to a head 3 weeks in. Dominic called her on a Thursday night. Kai was asleep. Margaret was out with friends. "We need to tell him," Dominic said without preamble. "The whole truth, about the papers I signed, about me walking away. I don't think he's ready." Or, "You're not ready," Dominic interrupted gently. "Mariana, he's going to find out eventually. Adoption records, internet searches. Someone at school whose parent knows our story. Better it comes from us. He'll hate you." Maybe, probably, but he deserves to make that choice with all the information. Here's what nobody tells you about secrets. They don't stay buried. They grow roots and eventually crack the foundation of everything you've built. "I want to be there," Mariana said finally. "I wouldn't have it any other way." They planned for Saturday afternoon, after lunch. But before the sugar crash from ice cream made complex conversations impossible, the 3 of them sat in Mariana's living room, Kai on the couch between them, sensing something big was coming with the intuition children have for adult tension. "Buddy," Mariana started, "remember how we talked about how Dominic is your biological dad?" Kai nodded warily. "There's more to that story." Dominic took over. "And it's not a nice story. But you deserve to know the truth." He told it. All of it. His sister dying, the baby in foster care, the overwhelming grief that convinced him he'd destroy anything he touched. "I signed papers," Dominic said, his voice steady but his hands trembling. "Legal papers that said I didn't want to be your father. That gave up my rights to you." Kai's face was unreadable. "You didn't want me?" "I was terrified of you," Dominic corrected carefully. "I'd just lost my sister. I couldn't imagine being responsible for keeping another person alive when I'd failed at protecting her. So I ran, and I'm sorrier for that than I have words to express." Silence. Heavy. Terrible. "But Mom wanted me," Kai finally said, looking at Mariana. "Mom fought for you," Dominic confirmed. "She went through months of paperwork and home inspections and everything the foster system required. She chose you when I was too much of a coward to." Who gets to decide when a child learns his mother isn't his biological mother and his father abandoned him at birth? Kai processed this the way he processed everything, quietly, internally, with thoughts too complex for his age. "Are you going to leave again?" he asked. The question punched through all the careful explanations. "No," Dominic said firmly. "I promise." "You promised before," Kai interrupted, and there was steel in his 8-year-old voice. "You promised when I was a baby, probably, and then you left. Why should I believe you now?" Dominic had no good answer. Because Kai was right. "You shouldn't," Dominic finally said. "Not yet. Trust isn't given, it's earned, and I need to earn yours, which means showing up every single time. Until you believe I'm not going to disappear." Kai looked at Mariana. "What do you think?" "I think," Mariana said carefully, "that people can make terrible mistakes and still deserve the chance to fix them. But I also think you get to decide if you want to give someone that chance." "This is your choice, Kai. Not mine, not Dominic's. Yours." The 8-year-old sat between them, carrying the weight of a decision no child should have to make. "I want to be angry," he finally said. "But I don't know how to be angry at someone I'm just starting to know." "You're allowed to be angry," Mariana assured him. "You're allowed to feel however you feel." "Can I think about it?" Kai asked. "Of course," Dominic said. "Take all the time you need." That night, after Dominic had left and Kai had retreated to his room with the weight of the world on his small shoulders, Mariana sat alone in her kitchen. Her phone showed 2 messages. From her mother, "How did it go?" From Dominic, "I'm sorry for all of it." She responded to neither, just sat in the silence, wondering if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life or the bravest choice. The decision was made for them when Kai found something he was never supposed to see. It happened on a Tuesday. Kai was looking for colored pencils for a school project. Mariana had told him to check the storage closet where she kept extra art supplies and forgotten memories in boxes she'd meant to organize for years. She was in the kitchen, reviewing her work schedule, when she heard it. Silence. Not the normal silence of a child absorbed in a task. The heavy silence of discovery, of understanding shifting. "Kai?" she called. "Did you find the pencils?" No answer. Mariana felt dread settle in her stomach like lead. She walked to the storage closet, and there he was, sitting on the floor, surrounded by boxes of tax documents and old photos and baby things she'd kept meaning to organize. In his hands were papers. Official papers with government seals and legal language. The adoption papers. "Why does this say terminated parental rights?" Kai's voice was small, confused. "Why does it say Dominic signed papers on March 15th, 2017? Mariana's world tilted. "Kai, honey, you said he was scared. You said he didn't know about you having me." Kai looked up, and his eyes, storm gray eyes that were Dominic's but heartbroken in a way Dominic's had never been, were filled with betrayal. "But he signed papers before you even got me. He knew I existed, and he signed papers saying he didn't want me. It's more complicated than that." "Is it?" Kai's voice cracked. 8 years old and having to process abandonment in black and white legal language. "Because it looks pretty simple. He didn't want me, and you lied." "I didn't lie." "You didn't tell me the truth." Kai stood, the papers clutched in his fists. "You made it sound like he didn't know where I was, like it was some big mystery. But he knew. He always knew. He just didn't care. The worst part wasn't telling him. It was watching him realize his entire identity was built on information he didn't have." "Kai, please, let me explain. Did you even want me?" The question came out of nowhere. Raw, terrified. "Or did you just feel sorry for me? The baby nobody wanted?" Mariana dropped to her knees, grabbed his shoulders gently but firmly. "Don't you dare," she said fiercely. "Don't you dare question whether I wanted you. I fought for you. I rearranged my entire life for you. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, and I would make the same choice 1,000 times over." But Dominic wouldn't. Dominic was broken, grieving, making terrible choices because his sister died and he couldn't see past his own pain. "That's an excuse," Kai said, and his perception was devastating. "You were sad too, about losing someone you loved, but you didn't leave me. How do you argue with that kind of logic? How do you defend the indefensible?" "You're right," Mariana admitted. "It is an excuse. Dominic made a choice, a bad one, and you're allowed to be angry about it." "I don't want to see him anymore." The words hit like a physical blow. "Okay," Mariana said, even though her heart was breaking. That's your choice. I'll tell him. Does he just feel guilty? Kai's voice was so small now, vulnerable in a way that made Mariana want to build walls around him that nothing could penetrate. Is that why he came back? Not because he wants me, but because he feels bad? I think, Mariana chose her words carefully, that Dominic looked at you and realized what he'd lost. Not just a responsibility, a person, you, and I think he wants the chance to know that person. But he didn't want to know me when I was a baby, when it was hard. No, he didn't. And that was wrong. They sat on the storage closet floor surrounded by papers and broken trust. Mariana held her son while he cried angry, confused tears. Cried for the father he was just getting to know, and the father who'd given him up. Cried for the simplicity of the world before he'd found those papers. I hate this. Kai sobbed into her shoulder. I know, baby, I know. Later, after Kai had cried himself into exhaustion and fallen asleep on the couch, Mariana called Dominic. He answered on the first ring. Mariana, is everything okay? Kai found the adoption papers. Silence. He knows, she continued. Everything. The exact date you signed. The legal language. All of it. How is he? Devastated. Angry. He doesn't want to see you anymore. She heard Dominic's breath catch. I understand. Do you? Because an 8-year-old just had to process the fact that his biological father actively chose to give him up. That's not something you just understand and move on from. What do I do? Dominic's voice was raw. How do I fix this? I don't know if you can, Mariana admitted. This is what I was afraid of. This is why I wanted to wait. But you were right. The truth came out, and now we deal with the fallout. Can I talk to him? He doesn't want to talk to you. Then can I write him a letter? Something he can read when he's ready? Mariana considered. I'll ask him. But Dom? He gets to decide if and when he's ready to forgive you. You don't get to push that timeline. I know. No. After she hung up, Mariana sat in the dark and thought about Olivia. About her journal entry that suggested she'd orchestrated all of this. If Olivia could see them now, her brother and the nurse she'd loved, trying to navigate the wreckage of choices made in grief, what would she say? Probably something like, I told you Dominic would be an amazing father someday. I just didn't mention how hard he'd have to work to get there. Kai looked at Mariana with eyes, Dominic's eyes filled with tears, and asked a question that would haunt all three of them. Does he want me now, or does he just feel guilty? And Mariana realized she didn't know the answer. The letter arrived 2 days later. Mariana found it in her mailbox, addressed to Kai in Dominic's precise handwriting. No return address. Just a single envelope containing what she assumed was an explanation or apology or plea. She gave it to Kai without reading it. From Dominic, she said simply, You don't have to read it if you don't want to, but it's yours. Kai took the envelope, held it like it might explode, disappeared into his room without a word. An hour later, he emerged, eyes red, letter crumpled in his fist. He says he's sorry, Kai reported. He says he was wrong and scared, and he wants to be better. What do you think? I think sorry isn't enough. 8 years old and already understanding that words were cheap compared to actions. You're probably right, Mariana agreed. That night, unable to sleep, Mariana found herself digging through her own storage, looking for something she'd kept hidden for 8 years. Olivia's journal. She'd taken it after that devastating night when they discovered the truth. Dominic had been too overwhelmed to think about practical things. So Mariana had carefully packed away his sister's words, intending to give them back when he was ready. She'd never given them back. Now, sitting in her kitchen at midnight with chamomile tea she wouldn't drink, Mariana read through entries she'd only skimmed before, and found something that made her breath catch. An entry from 6 months before Olivia died, before the pregnancy, before everything fell apart. Had dinner with Dominic and Mariana tonight. They don't know I'm writing this, but I need to document it because I'm almost certain these two are going to end up together. The way he looks at her like she's the only real thing in his manufactured world. The way she looks at him like she sees past all the CEO bullshit to the person underneath. Dominic told me tonight after Mariana left that he'd never thought about having kids before her. That for the first time, he could imagine it. A family. A life that wasn't just acquisition meetings and board calls. I told him he'd be an amazing father someday. He laughed it off, but I saw his face. He was thinking about it. Really thinking about it. I think Mariana could be the person who shows him how to stop running from intimacy, and I think he could be the person who shows her that love doesn't always end in disappointment. I'm not saying I planned what comes next, but if something happens to me, and if my baby needs parents, I can't imagine two people I'd trust more than Dominic and Mariana, together. Mariana sat back, the journal trembling in her hands. This conversation now took new meaning. Everything she thought was random, meeting Dominic at the hospital, falling in love with him, adopting Kai, suddenly felt like following a path Olivia had illuminated. The journal wasn't just confession. It was a blueprint. She knew what she was doing. Olivia had known Dominic would panic when she died, knew he'd run from the responsibility of parenthood, but she'd also known about Mariana, about their relationship, about the possibility that grief might tear them apart, and she'd left the journal anyway. Left it where Dominic would find it. Left instructions that would force the very situation she'd predicted. Everything that seemed like chaos was actually Olivia's design. She'd orchestrated this reunion from beyond the grave. "You manipulative, brilliant woman," Mariana whispered to the ghost of someone she'd loved like a sister. The question was, had Olivia been right? Could Dominic and Mariana actually build the family she envisioned? Or had grief and time destroyed that possibility? Mariana pulled out her phone, stared at Dominic's contact information for a long time. Then she texted, "Can you come over tomorrow? Alone. I found something you need to see." The response came within seconds. "I'll be there." The next evening, after Kai had gone to his friend Marcus's house for a sleepover, Mariana handed Dominic his sister's journal. "Read the entry from 6 months before she died," she said quietly. She watched his face as he read. Watched realization dawn. Watched him understand that his sister had seen possibilities he'd been too scared to imagine. "She wanted us to raise Kai together," Dominic whispered. "That's why she left the journal where I'd find it. Why she wrote instructions." "She knew you'd panic," Mariana said. "Knew you'd run, but I think she also believed you'd find your way back, eventually." "Do you believe that?" Dominic looked up, his gray eyes intense. "That we could be what she envisioned? Not just co-parents, a family?" Mariana's breath caught. Because that was the question, wasn't it? Not whether Dominic could be a father to Kai. Whether they could be what Olivia had seen in them all those years ago. "I don't know," she admitted. 8 years is a long time. We're different people now. Are we? Dominic moved closer. "Because I still see the woman who brought me coffee at 3 a.m. when my world was falling apart. Still see the person who made me feel human when everything else felt like performance. And I see the man who ran when things got hard," Mariana countered, but her voice was soft, not accusatory, just honest. "Then let me show you I'm not that man anymore." Dominic's voice was raw with emotion. "Let me prove that Olivia was right, that I could be the father Kai deserves and the partner you deserve. If you give me the chance." Mariana thought about Kai, about his confusion and anger and fear of being abandoned again, thought about her own walls, built brick by brick over 8 years of doing everything alone. But she also thought about Olivia's words. "I think Mariana could be the person who shows him how to stop running from intimacy." "Kai gets to decide about you being his father," Mariana said finally. "That's non-negotiable. You earn his trust on his timeline, not yours." "Agreed. But us?" She met his eyes. "If there's going to be an us, it starts from scratch. No history, no expectations based on who we used to be. You prove you're someone I can trust. Slowly, carefully. I'll prove it every day if that's what it takes." Armed with this understanding, Mariana made a decision that terrified her. A decision that would change everything. She called Dominic 3 days later. "Kai's ready," she said. The words felt heavy. "He wants to meet you, really meet you. Just the two of you. Saturday at the park." "Are you sure he's ready?" "No," Mariana admitted. "But I think he needs to face this, on his own terms." Saturday arrived cold and bright. Mariana dropped Kai off at Riverside Park with a knot of anxiety in her stomach. "You don't have to do this," she told him for the 17th time. I know, Mom. Kai squared his small shoulders. But I want to hear what he has to say. For real. Not through letters or with you there. When had her baby gotten so brave? She watched Kai walk toward where Dominic waited by the fountain, watched father and son meet in the middle. Too far away to hear their conversation, but close enough to see Kai's stiff posture gradually relax. They talked for over an hour. Mariana saw Kai's hands gesturing animatedly, saw Dominic laugh at something, saw them throw a football back and forth with increasing comfort. And she dared to hope. Maybe Olivia had been right all along. Maybe some families weren't born. They were built, slowly, painfully, through second chances and earned trust and the courage to believe that people could change. When Kai finally ran back to her, his face was complicated. Not happy, exactly, but not devastated either. So? Mariana asked carefully. He's not terrible, Kai said with 8-year-old diplomacy. Can we get ice cream? It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. The next 3 weeks passed in a strange new normal. Dominic showed up, to games, to school events, to random Tuesday dinners because Kai had asked if he could come over. He learned Kai's homework routine, memorized his dietary restrictions, no shellfish, mild peanut allergy, figured out that Kai needed exactly 15 minutes of decompression time after school before he could talk about his day. All the small details that Mariana had learned through 8 years of trial and error, Dominic absorbed like he was studying for the most important test of his life, because he was. 3 Saturdays after their park meeting, Dominic suggested a trip. Just the 3 of them. Seattle. A tech conference he usually attended alone, but this time, maybe you both could come? We'd make a vacation out of it. See the Space Needle. Visit the aquarium. Kai keeps talking about marine biology. Kai's eyes lit up. Really? We could go? Mariana hesitated. A trip felt significant, like crossing some invisible line from co-parenting to something else. Think about it, Dominic said, reading her hesitation. No pressure, just an offer. But the look on Kai's face made the decision for her. Okay, let's do it. Seattle was magical. They stayed in a hotel with a view of the waterfront. Visited the aquarium where Kai pressed his face against every tank, absorbing information like a sponge. Rode to the top of the Space Needle and took photos that actually looked like a family. On the second night, after Kai had fallen asleep in his adjoining room, Mariana and Dominic sat on the hotel balcony, watching the city lights. This is nice, Mariana said quietly. All of it. I'm glad we came. Me too. Dominic shifted closer. Can I tell you something? Always. I'm happier than I've been in 8 years. Maybe happier than I've ever been. And it's because of you and Kai. You two are what matters. Mariana looked at him. Really looked. Saw genuine peace in his expression. Saw someone who'd finally figured out what he'd been running from all along. She leaned in, kissed him. Soft and tentative and full of possibility. When they pulled apart, Dominic smiled. Does this mean we're not starting from scratch anymore? Maybe we're building something new, on the foundation of what we were, but better this time. It seemed like resolution, like the hard part was over, like they'd earned their happy ending. But sometimes the real test comes after you think you've won. They returned from Seattle on a Sunday. Monday, Mariana went back to work. Kai went back to school. Dominic went back to running his company. Normal life resumed. On Wednesday afternoon, Mariana got a text from Dominic. Big presentation Friday. Potential investors for the new AI initiative. Dinner Saturday to celebrate? She texted back. Can't wait. Kai has his awards ceremony that night, though. 6 p.m. at school. You're still coming, right? The response took longer than usual. About that. Mariana's stomach dropped. Call me, she typed. Now. The phone rang seconds later. The investors changed the meeting, Dominic said without preamble. Friday evening instead of afternoon. It'll run late. Dinner afterward is mandatory. They're flying in from Tokyo. So come to the award ceremony and skip the dinner. I can't. These investors are critical. Without them. Without them, your company finds other investors, Mariana interrupted coldly. But if you miss Kai's ceremony, there's no finding another father. Mariana, please. You're being unreasonable. Am I? Because 3 weeks ago you gave me a speech about how the empire matters less than the people you love. Or does that only apply when it's convenient? This is different. It's never different, Dominic. There's always another meeting, another crisis, another thing that seems more important. But Kai's childhood is happening now. I know that. Do you? Because this looks exactly like 8 years ago. You're doing it again. Silence on the line. I'll figure it out, Dominic finally said. I'll make it work. You'd better. Because if you don't show up Friday, don't bother showing up ever again. She hung up before he could respond. Spent the rest of Wednesday and all of Thursday in a state of simmering anger mixed with familiar dread. Friday morning she texted, "Are you coming tonight?" No response. "Dominic, Kai keeps asking if you'll be there." No response. 4 p.m. Ceremony starts at 6. Please don't do this to him. Finally, at 5:15 p.m., a text came through. "I'm so sorry. The meeting ran over. I tried to get out early, but the investors had questions. I won't make it in time. Please tell Kai I'm sorry and I'll make it up to him." Mariana stared at her phone, feeling 8 years of walls rebuilding themselves brick by brick. She'd been right. Nothing had changed. Fear didn't own Dominic anymore. Ambition did. But the result was the same. He chose work. Again. The awards ceremony was in the school gymnasium, transformed with decorations and rows of folding chairs. Parents filled every seat, phones ready to capture their children's moments. Mariana sat in the third row, an empty seat beside her where Dominic should have been. Kai kept glancing back, scanning the crowd with increasingly obvious disappointment. The ceremony started. Principal Morrison gave a lengthy speech. Teachers presented awards. Finally, they reached third grade. Kai Voss, the principal called. Academic Excellence Award and Outstanding Science Student. Kai stood, walked to the stage with his small shoulders squared, accepted his certificates with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. When he returned to his seat, he turned back one more time, looking for a father who wasn't there. Mariana felt her heart crack clean through. After the ceremony, in the parking lot, Kai was silent, unusual for a kid who normally filled every silence with words. "You did great, baby," Mariana tried. "2 awards. I'm so proud." "Thanks." Monotone. Defeated. "Kai, he's not coming back, is he?" Kai's voice was small. "Not really. He'll just keep showing up until something more important comes along." "Honey, the meeting ran late." "There's always a meeting, Mom. You told me adults who really care make time, so I guess he doesn't really care." What could she say to that? They drove home in silence. Kai went straight to his room. Didn't want dinner. Didn't want to talk. Mariana sat in her kitchen, the same kitchen where this had all started, and felt the crushing weight of being right. She'd tried, gave him second chances, believed he'd changed. But people don't change. Not really. They just find new ways to repeat the same patterns. At 7:30, her phone rang. "Dominic." She answered on the 4th ring. "What?" "Mariana, I'm so sorry. The meeting." "I don't want to hear it." She cut him off, her voice cold as ice. "You made a choice. Again. And it wasn't Kai. That's not fair." "You know what's not fair? An 8-year-old kid sitting in that audience, watching everyone else's parents cheer for them while his seat sat empty. That's not fair, Dominic. I tried. You didn't try hard enough. And you know what? I'm done. We're done. You proved exactly what I suspected all along. You're still the man who runs. You just dress it up differently now. Instead of running from grief, you run toward work. But the result is the same. Kai gets abandoned. Don't do this. You did this. Stay away from us. Stay away from Kai. We were fine before you showed up, and we'll be fine after you're gone. She hung up, blocked his number before he could call back, sat in the darkness and cried, not for herself, for Kai, for the father he'd briefly believed in before reality shattered that belief. For 3 days, silence. On day 4, Saturday, Kai had his championship playoff game, the one that would determine if they advanced to regionals. Mariana packed his gear, made his lucky pregame sandwich, and tried to project enthusiasm she didn't feel. Big game today, she said with forced cheerfulness. Yeah. Kai's responses had been monosyllabic since Friday. They arrived at the field 45 minutes early. Kai went through warm-ups with mechanical precision. Good technique. Zero passion. The bleachers filled. Parents and siblings and grandparents, all there to watch their kids play. Mariana sat alone. 15 minutes before game time, she pulled out her phone, stared at Dominic's blocked contact, unblocked it, typed, "You proved me right. Don't bother trying to fix this. We're done." Hit send before she could change her mind. The response came instantly. "Mariana, please, let me explain." She reblocked the number, shoved her phone in her bag. The referee's whistle blew. The game started. Kai played like a robot, technically proficient but completely disconnected. He moved through the motions, but the joy that usually lit up his face when he played was gone. By halftime, they were down 3-1. Kai had missed 2 easy shots. "Kai," Mariana called him over during the break. "What's going on?" "Nothing." He wouldn't meet her eyes. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. Talk to me." "What's the point?" Kai's voice cracked. "Nothing matters anyway. People leave. They always leave. Why should I care about soccer or awards or anything?" Mariana's heart shattered into a million pieces. This was what Dominic had done. Not just disappointed a kid, fundamentally altered his worldview. Made him believe that caring about things was pointless because the people you cared about would let you down. The second half started worse than the first. Kai barely tried. Let defenders blow past him. Didn't even attempt shots when he had openings. His team was losing. Badly. 4-1, 5-1. Then, at the 50-minute mark, there was a commotion at the field entrance. Someone pushing through the crowd. Moving fast. Urgent. Mariana turned to look, and her breath caught. Dominic, not in his usual perfectly pressed clothes, in rumpled dress pants and a button-down with the sleeves rolled up. No tie. Hair disheveled. He looked like he'd been through hell. He was breathing hard, like he'd been running. Their eyes met across the field. Mariana pulled out her phone, fingers shaking, unblocked his number for the second time that day, dialed. He answered instantly. "Mariana, where were you?" she demanded. "Where the hell were you? Turn around." She turned, and there he was, standing at the entrance to the field, phone pressed to his ear. "I was on a plane," Dominic said, his words coming fast. "At the airport, boarding pass in hand. The Tokyo investors were flying me out tonight for final negotiations. The car was waiting. Everything was arranged. And," her voice was cold despite the fact that he was here, "and I was walking down the jet bridge, actually walking onto the plane, and I looked at my phone, saw your text, saw Kai's game time, and I just stopped." Mariana watched him move closer, watched other parents turn to stare at the disheveled man pushing through toward the soccer field. "I turned around," Dominic continued, still on the phone even though he was only 20 feet away now. "Canceled Tokyo. Told them to find another CEO because I had somewhere more important to be. Then, I drove here, 70 in a 50 zone, got pulled over, showed the cop a photo of Kai, and said I was missing my son's championship game. 15 feet. "Did he give you the ticket?" Mariana asked, and she was crying now. "He gave me a police escort." Dominic finally lowered his phone. 10 feet away. 5. Right in front of her. "Mariana, I'm done. Done choosing work over family. Done missing moments I can never get back. Done being the man who runs. You almost got on that plane. I know. And I'm sorry it took walking onto it to realize what I was doing. But I didn't get on. I came here because Kai matters more than any deal. And you matter more than any empire." On the field, someone had noticed him. Kai's coach, pointing. Then Kai himself, turning to look. His face went through rapid transformations. Shock, disbelief, hope, anger, joy. "Dominic," Kai's voice carried across the field. The game had stopped. Everyone was staring. "I'm sorry I'm late," Dominic called back. His voice cracked on the words. "I'm sorry for Friday. I'm sorry for almost missing this. But I'm here now, and I'm never leaving again." The referee looked confused. The coach waved permission for a brief pause. Kai stood at midfield, 8 years old, holding the weight of a decision no child should have to make. Forgive the man who'd failed him twice. Or protect himself from ever being hurt again. You promised. Kai called back, and his voice was steady, despite the tears streaming down his face. You promised you'd be at the awards ceremony. I know, and I broke that promise. There's no excuse good enough for that. Then why should I believe you now? The question hung in the air. Every parent in the stands was watching this private moment made public. Dominic took a step onto the field, then another. Walked until he was standing right in front of Kai. Because I love you, he said simply. And I finally figured out that love isn't a feeling. It's a choice you make every single day. And I'm choosing you. Over deals and investors and empires and everything else. I'm choosing you, Kai, today and every day after this. Kai stared at him. Then, in an 8-year-old's devastating honesty, said, You hurt my mom too. You have to fix that too. Every eye turned to Mariana. Dominic looked at her. Gray eyes that had broken her heart twice, now asking for a third chance she wasn't sure she could give. I know, he said. And I will. If she'll let me. The referee cleared his throat. Kid, we need to finish this game. Can he stay? Kai asked. Can he stay and watch? Is he on the roster? The referee looked amused. He's my dad. The word stopped time. Not Dominic. Not my biological father. Dad. Dominic's face absolutely crumbled. He pressed a hand over his mouth, shoulders shaking. Then, yeah, kid. He can stay. Kai turned back to his team, then stopped, ran back to Dominic, hugged him fiercely. Don't leave, he whispered. Never again, Dominic promised. The game resumed, and Kai played like a boy who'd remembered why things mattered. He scored 3 goals in the final 20 minutes. Pure aggression channeled into skill. The defense didn't stand a chance. Final score, 6-5. Kai's team won. The celebration was chaos. Kids piling on each other, parents cheering. When they presented Kai with the MVP trophy, he looked at the bleachers. At Mariana, who'd been there for every game since he was 5. At Dominic, who'd almost missed this one, but hadn't. Can they both come down? Kai asked the coach. Both? My mom and my dad. They went down together. Stood on either side of Kai while the team photographer took pictures. A family. Complicated and unconventional and built from broken pieces, but a family nonetheless. Later, after ice cream and celebrations, after Kai had finally gone to bed, Mariana and Dominic stood in her driveway. Thank you, she said, for showing up, for proving me wrong. I didn't prove you wrong. You were completely right to doubt me. I just finally became someone worthy of your trust. He pulled her closer. Best decision I ever made, leaving that airport. Second best, Mariana corrected. Best decision was showing up for Kai's game. No, Dominic kissed her forehead. Best decision was 8 years ago when I met a nurse who saw through all my defenses. I just needed 8 years to be brave enough to deserve her. From down the hall, they heard Kai's voice. Are you guys being mushy out there? Mind your business and go to sleep, Mariana called back, laughing. Can't sleep if you're being gross. Kid has terrible timing, Dominic muttered. Kid has perfect timing, Mariana corrected. Keeps us honest. Here's what they learned. You can't undo the past. You can only prove who you are in the present. And Dominic was proving it, every single day. 3 years later, Kai was 11, all gangly limbs and growing into features that looked more like Dominic every day. Mariana had finished her advanced degree. Dominic had stepped back from his CEO role to consult part-time and coach Kai's soccer team. They'd gotten married in a small ceremony with just family. Kai was the ring bearer, taking his job with utmost seriousness. They were a family, unconventional, built from broken pieces, but real. And on a Tuesday afternoon, Mariana got a call from Patricia at Family Services. I have a situation. A newborn. Mother passed during delivery. No father on record. And I remembered what you did with Kai. That evening at dinner, Mariana told them. Kai's eyes went wide. A sister? I could have a sister? Maybe, if you want to. What do you think? Dominic asked carefully. Mariana thought about Kai at 3 days old, about second chances and family built from broken pieces, about Olivia's journal entry, about fate bringing people together. I think our family started unconventionally. Maybe that's just our path. Kai bounced in his seat. Can we meet her, please? Dominic reached across the table, took Mariana's hand. Whatever you decide, I'm with you, all in. The words meant something different now, backed by years of proof instead of hollow promise. Let's meet her, Mariana decided. 3 weeks later, they brought home a newborn girl, dark hair, bright eyes, lungs that worked overtime. Kai held her with the careful reverence of an 11-year-old who'd just become a big brother. What's her name? He asked. Mariana and Dominic exchanged glances. Olivia, they said together. Her name is Olivia, because some circles needed to close before new ones could begin. And as Mariana stood in her kitchen, the same kitchen where a tea mug had shattered 4 years ago, she thought about journeys. Hers, Dominic's, Kai's, little Olivia's just beginning. All of them finding their way to each other through grief and choice and the stubborn belief that love was worth fighting for. We're getting there, she whispered to the original Olivia, wherever she was. All of us. Together. We're getting there. And somehow, that was exactly enough. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and share it with someone who believes in second chances. Leave a comment telling me, would you have forgiven Dominic? Or was 3 strikes too many? I read every single one. And remember, Beautiful Souls family isn't about perfection. It's about presence. It's about choosing to show up every single day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. This has been Mr. Sterling's Secrets of Love. Until next time, keep believing that broken things can be made beautiful again.